I'm here with Matt Smith of Theocracy to talk about their latest record, Mosaic, out right now on all streaming platforms and all available places where you can buy, stream, download, purchase, whatever all the good stuff is. Thank you very much, Matt, for taking the time to talk about this record, to talk about the band.
Pedro, thank you for speaking to me. It's great to be here.
So let's talk about the process that took you, the roadmap that took you guys to this record. Looking back at previous albums and now looking back at this one, how is that process? How has that roadmap been for you?
Well, it was bumpy at times. It was good overall, but it was I guess the most interesting thing about it was I after our last album, Ghost Ship, I sort of hit a wall of burnout between all the albums just take so much out of me, and between doing four of them and the tours and all the shows and working on the side studio projects and travel and everything else, I just needed a break. And so I told the guys, I needed a bit of a break, and we'd see if I would, find the inspiration and the energy to do another album. And then, so we took some time, and then some songs started coming, and then then COVID happened, and then we had a lineup change, and we had a record label change, and so suddenly it's all these years later, so it's one of those things where it started out as kind of an intentional break, and then turned into something way longer than we anticipated. So in a sense, it's it feels like the album's been done for so long, so it's a relief that it's out and people can finally hear it. But yeah, it was quite a journey to get here.
How much of that journey is going to have an impact on you as a musician going forward?
Well, a lot. I mean, especially with the two things I mentioned, getting a new member. We added a guy named Taylor Washington on lead guitar, and I knew Taylor because I had recorded and produced the debut album for his band Paladin out of Atlanta, and so he's just a mind-blowing player and also a mind-blowing singer because he's the lead singer for that band. And so being able to harmonize with him live, and have that voice, and just the new energy that always comes from a new member. And then the other thing being the new record label, Atomic Fire. I mean, it's such a big kind of step up in a lot of ways, for us. So far so good. So those, at least those two things, will definitely have an effect going forward for sure.
Yeah, I actually just saw him in Toronto with Paladin on tour. They played a show in Toronto about a week ago.
Oh, great. Yeah, I saw they were up there with Unleash the Archers and so forth, and Litharo, I think.
Yeah,
How was the show? How was the
yeah.
show?
Oh, it was a great show, and what a guitar player! Holy,
Oh man,
what a singer
yeah,
too! I
I
mean,
know, I
full
know.
package, really. Like
He really is. He
you
really
can't go
is.
wrong with that guy. So it was great seeing them live. Now, when you look at the mosaic that makes this album, is there certain pieces that are more important in order to create that mosaic?
Um, as far as like band members or
No, as far
inspiration
as
or
musical sonic experience.
I think just well, I think you said one of the key words there, which is just experience. I mean, having done it, 5 times now, it's you learn something with every record, and now I've done, so many between us and other bands that I know the amount of work it takes, and I know um I can kind of visualize it going in. So in a way, everything that you've done in the past kind of helps form, what you're doing at the moment. So despite the hardships that I mentioned and the time, the extended time that it took and so forth, the actual recording was pretty easy and seamless. I mean, it's always hard work. So aside from that, of course, but there weren't really any unexpected situations that came up or anything. Everyone in the band now is a total pro, and so I think we've all just learned from our experience in the past.
I felt like the album had such a great design because it really allows you to immerse yourself in the experience of listening to the record. And it doesn't really give the listener a chance to just kind of pause it and walk away from it. Almost like when you're watching a movie and you're really enthralled in it, you just kind of want to see what's going to happen next. The album has that beauty to it. When you guys are creating the songs, are you thinking about that? Are you thinking about how this record has to sound as a whole?
I usually start thinking about that, sometime toward the end of the process. And it really depends. And this one was interesting because of what I mentioned of sort of stepping away after the last record and not knowing if there was going to necessarily even be a fifth album. And so it wasn't so, because of that, the songs were sort of written over that period of a few years, as opposed to kind of being written, all at once, with the express purpose of becoming an album. I remember there's a song on there called the Sixth Grade Extinction, and I wrote that first. And we even talked about at the time, that was sort of like right in the middle of when so many artists were putting out surprise standalone singles, instead of albums. And so we had talked about at the time, do we want to put this out, as a, record it and put it out just by itself, not on an album, just to kind of surprise the fans and have something out there. And then that didn't happen. And then kind of more songs came. And so then, at some point it becomes apparent, all right, well, we've got enough for an album now. And then when I start to think about it is when I'll kind of step back and take a listen to everything I have and see sort of how it works as a journey and how it fits together, and start thinking about, track listing and running order and things like that, because those are still very important to me, despite the fact that so many people don't really care about albums now and just listen to whatever song they, cherry pick songs here and there. But and then at the end of the process, that's actually how the song Return to Dust, which was the first single, came about. I think I wrote that last because when I listened through, I felt like we were missing that kind of mid-tempo anthem song that we usually have on every album. And so just to balance out the journey of, the long stuff and the thrashy stuff and everything else, I wrote that song to sort of complete it. And then I felt like we had the entire journey that you mentioned.
This album definitely has a little bit more of power as far as the guitar sound is concerned. I mean, it really jumps into the forefront. Was that something that you guys consciously wanted to add a little bit more meat on the bone, if you will, or the band member change up with a new guitarist had an impact on that as well?
That actually came from, we always spend so much time on the guitar sound, and went through a lot of different versions and possibilities this time around, and that just came from the material. Um I just felt like a lot of the songs, even though there was no, other people have asked, people have commented saying this album sounds more thrashy, and asked if it was an intentional, direction and things like that. And it wasn't at all. It was just what, came out when I was writing. But then after listening, I felt like, because there were so many of those thrashy moments, the guitar tone needed to kind of reflect that. And so we ended up going with something kind of more aggressive and a little more almost abrasive, in a way, kind of that old school sort of thrashy tone. And it worked great, I think, with the songs. And so it was really the songs kind of set the sound that we ended up going with.
Your vocals are one of the highlights of this record. Outstanding performance. I mean, if I had a hat, I would tip my hat to you because I absolutely love your vocal performance. Have you had a chance to look at this record and maybe not rank, but see where this album sits for you as far as your vocal performance is concerned when you compare it to previous albums?
Well, thank you, Pedro. I appreciate that. No, I haven't really thought, I felt like with the last album, Ghost Ship, I really hit a personal high in terms of the vocals. And so, um, plus I blew my voice out doing it. So that was a whole ordeal. But, so I haven't really thought beyond that. This time I tried to keep it a little more, um, I mean, it's always a lot of takes and a lot of work, but I tried to get a little less, intensive and in the weeds with it than I did last time around. Um, just because of how rough that experience was. So I tried to keep it a little more fun for myself this time, and have it not be such a dire prospect to do everything. So yeah, I don't really know, how it would compare with the past albums, but I'm happy to hear you say that, and I'll I guess I'll really start thinking about these how these songs feel vocally, once we start playing them live.
And continue on the vocal topic, I honestly consider you a pillar of the band. What do you bring to the table? Your voice is part of the DNA, is part of the fingerprint of the sound of this band. What the band offers, having such an important role, being in the forefront, does that add extra pressure on you?
Oh, sure. I mean, it's funny because really the pressure for me is mostly in the songwriting and the kind of the level that we try to maintain. I said after the first album, in a bunch of interviews that, I said we'll never do a throwaway song and a filler song, and second rate material, and I don't regret saying it, but it did add a lot of pressure because it leads to a lot of kind of sleepless nights of, wondering if this is good enough, and throwing this idea away, and rewriting this and that, so that's where most of the pressure comes from, and then the singing part is just kind of, it's like, well, nobody else is going to do it, so I guess that'll be my job in the in the band, and so it's funny because it still kind of blows me away when people like you say such kind things about the singing, because I still think of myself so much more as a writer than as a singer. um so I'm happy to hear that things are still, I guess, up to quality.
You mentioned that once you go live, that's when you're going to really find out, the true nature of these songs. Are you thinking about which tracks will work live and which songs, due to the demand vocally from them in the studio, that maybe those tracks, there's a few that have to stay on the back burner?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's always different live, because in the studio you can obviously you can record it however you want, line by line, and you don't really have to think about sort of the endurance of doing it all in one take, unless you want to do it that way. So, it always takes on a different sort of feel live, because you have to learn, just how to approach it. Where do I have to breathe? How do I, do I need to change the way I sing something here and there to be able to keep the endurance to do the whole song, and this and that. So that's when you really kind of know how how a song is going to feel. Um, but yeah, really, it mostly just comes down to just trying it and seeing what works well in front of an audience. I mean, I'm open to trying pretty much any of these songs. We've done the only two that we've done. So, well, no, we've done three so far. We did Sixth Grade Extinction, and then we did the two singles. We did Return to Dust and Mosaic, the title track. And so far, they've all three gone over great and felt great to perform. So I look forward to working on more of them.
From your point of view, what's the most stressful part of a new album cycle?
Hmm.
The interviews.
No, no. Talking to people like you is great. Although it's it's funny, with Atomic Fire, there have been five times as many interviews, as we've done in the past this time. So it's been great. It's been it's a challenge of I'm trying not to repeat myself, too many times and say the same thing in all these interviews. But um, really, the once the songs are written, I still think that's the most stressful and challenging part. I mean, I do all the production and the engineering and things like that. That's a side job of mine too, because I have a studio, and so, but that part of it I really enjoy. So I don't, that doesn't feel as stressful. That feels just like work and fun. Because I have a goal that I'm after, and I pretty much know how to achieve that goal now, and so it's kind of just, enjoying the process of getting there. Um, I mean, the vocals can be stressful depending on the song, but I've done enough of these where I know that I'll get there eventually, as long as I keep working at it. So really, I would say, it really is that first part of writing, before the recording even starts, because if the songs aren't up to snuff, then there's no album, so once we realize that we have something worth recording, that's always a huge burden off, and then kind of the fun can start, and it is always stressful, but it's fun as well.
One last question for you, and that is, now that the album is out, that everybody can listen to the songs, what are the next plans, short term and long term, for the band?
Well, short term, we just got back from Germany. We played a couple shows there at a festival called Loud and Proud, and that was great. And we did and now we're kind of discussing what to do next as far as live stuff, because with everyone in the band, with families and side jobs and everything else, it becomes a challenge, and living in different places too. It well, four of us are basically in the same area. I'm in Athens, Georgia, here in the U.S., and the three guys are in Atlanta, which is about an hour and a half away. And then Ernie, our drummer, he's up in New Jersey, so he's kind of across the country. But all these things make it a challenge to kind of find the time when we can actually get together for 3 or 4 weeks and tour or whatever. So the discussion now is what do we want to. We've done whatever 6 European tours now, and a bunch of one-off shows and festivals and everything else. And then here in the U.S., it's been a little more scattered. We've played several shows, but it's been more kind of random festivals or random one-off shows here and there, or groupings and this that, as opposed to proper tours. So the discussion now is what we want to do first, if we want to concentrate on the States here or overseas again, and when we can do something that makes sense for everybody. So all that remains to be seen, but that's the goal at the moment. And then long term, I'm really not sure. I'm excited about the lineup that we have now, and all the members. I probably should have mentioned Ernie Topper and our drummer, when we were talking about Taylor earlier, because I mean, he's been with us since the first Ghost Ship shows. So he didn't record the last album, but he played all the shows for the last album and ever since. And so this is his first recorded, project with the band, Mosaic is. And so I know he's really excited to finally have something out with his name on it. And yeah, just all those guys are great. So I love our lineup now. So I feel like it won't take as long as it did, this time for a new album next time. It's I've learned to never try to predict the future, of course, but I would like to do something a little bit quicker this time than last time.
Well, Matt, thank you very much for your time. I sure hope to see you in Toronto at some point, maybe in 2024, playing some shows, bringing your wonderful voice to the masses here. So until then, I have a record to listen to, and that's not a bad thing. So
Thank you.
thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Pedro. It was a pleasure to talk to you, man. Thanks for all the kind words.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. All the best.
You too. Cheers.